CO, hi, I'm Traci Sorell, author of We Are Still Here, Native American Truths Everyone Should Know.
Hi, I'm Frane Lessac, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which I speak to you from in West Australia, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging.
I'm coming to you today from my tribal homelands of the Cherokee Nation, where we were relocated to in what is now northeastern Oklahoma. At the time was Indian Territory, but we're originally from the southeastern part of what is now the United States. But these lands that the Cherokee Nation now lives upon traditionally were the lands of the Osage and the Caddo nations. We're super excited to get to talk to each other. We haven't seen each other in quite a while with the pandemic.
So fabulous to see you, Traci. I mean, we have this baby together that, so I'm so excited to be able to talk about it with you and share some things maybe you don't even know about when I created the art.
I'm sure there are many things that I don't know. And I was going to ask you about that. You know, when I first thought about this idea, I got to see Karen Boss, our editor, in Vermont in late January of 2019. And she said, I really wanted to do another book with you and Frane. And do you have something in mind you want to write about? And I said, yes, I do. But I'd like it to be a picture book. But I don't know if you're going to want it to be a picture book because it's not for the traditional 4 to 7-year-old age group. And she said, well, what's your thoughts? And so I told her about, having kind of the entry point book, 25,000 foot level introduction to Native history, law, and policy as Native nations have experienced it in the U.S., from the end of treaty making in 1871 to the present. And she was like, wow, okay, let's see how that goes. I didn't really think about, to be honest, the illustrations initially. I just kept thinking about like how I was going to work the text. So what did you think when you first heard about the topic and that it would be for the middle grade range of kids rather than and young readers rather than, what is traditionally picture book age, which is a little younger?
Well, immediately I knew it was going to be a powerful and important book, an overview of so much history that I didn't know anything about, and that's why I knew how important it was. Honestly, it was really intimidating, but right from the beginning, I knew your background. I knew that I could rely on you if I had questions and I had any stumbles along the way. Because, my art is usually not as being whimsical, cheery, and happy, and I didn't have the manuscript yet, but I just knew the overview. And Karen Boss, our editor, she really had to talk me off the ledge a few times because once I did get that manuscript, I felt perhaps what you felt for many years. I mean, maybe anger, maybe depression, because I knew I'd have to visit these places that I knew were subjects that were so important yet confronting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely had a lot of anger when I first really learned the history beyond my tribe, of kind of what systematically had happened. And then I was an adult, a college student paying for my education at the time when I learned that. And so I really wanted to have our young people know this at a much earlier age, and that it is just part of the knowledge base that they would have growing up and they would understand. And knowing that none of the curriculum has changed since when I was, that young person in upper elementary, and beyond, I wanted to do this. So I was so grateful when, you were on board for kind of taking that journey, because like you say, it's not an easy one. At the same time, I had full faith that your art would make the text very accessible, but also would bring a needed understanding. As you know, from looking at the text, each double page spread has many different places you could go in terms of depicting images. And I thought, I know Frane is going to pick the best image and lay this out. And you absolutely did that. I want to know kind of what was your process for that?
Well, that was the first thing, is how was I going to depict these different subjects? And speaking to you, the idea of setting them across the country, different tribes, was essential. So my first thought, and I discussed it with Karen, you, and we were so lucky to meet together, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But maybe the refrain kept me going. We are still here. That gave me so much hope. And that was my positive bit about painting. But first I thought maybe I'll ghost the images, meaning that part of it will be in the past and I'll bring it to present. But I said, no, that's not right, because this is all set in the past. Then I thought maybe I could use a different color palette and then bring it slowly into full color. But I thought, no, that won't bring children or at the audience right to the immediacy of that history. And so I took each piece, and in each piece I had so much empathy. Each character I could create, and you might see there's lots of children there, but each one might be feeling. Like, for instance, the first one, a simulation, when there's a boy in the back daydreaming, and he is looking out the window and wishing he was back there, and just having them set in that uniforms for me. I mean, in Australia, there's a bit of parallel history about the stolen generation here, but knowing about how these children were taken away from their families and for years at a time, and while they're away, some of them might have passed away and their families would have passed away and they couldn't afford to go home again. So when I was learning these things, all that I put into the art.
And I think it really comes through, as I look at each page. I mean, I
just want to talk about one more if I can.
Sure, yeah.
The allotment one, that one also, that railroad that goes through the land tore through my heart, because when you think of the communities all living together and then separated by so far from each other where they can't communicate easily, in their little allotment with their plow and their house and their two oxen, and anyway.
Yeah, no, that one is hard for me too, and I know that it's set up on the Mandan, Hidatsa, Arika Reservation in North Dakota, but the Cherokee Nation was allotted too. And my great grandmother was a child. Her mother and her siblings all received allotments, and those allotments were not near where the larger group of our family was living, which was actually just south of me. They were more than an hour north of where I live. So you look at like those early attempts to break people up from being, near each other, like near ceremonial grounds, near where people are, and what is cutting through the nation at the same time are these railroads. I mean, you can see the railroads that crisscross the Cherokee Nation. I mean, it's very systematic and, to me, just diabolical. How there's the breakup of the land and families and community, for sure.
And then the spread of in Denver, that one as well. I really wanted to not show any sky. I wanted to show how these families, the displacement, they were encouraged to go into the cities, all those tall buildings towering over them, and the uncertainty on the children's faces, feeling what that would have been like. I mean, to be moved also into the cities, into little neighborhoods that became very poor neighborhoods. Many times. Yes,
absolutely. No, in so many cities, and Denver definitely being one of those. Just again, an alienation, right? I mean, you've got alienating with going to boarding schools or the allotments, and then the same thing with moving to the cities. There's no native neighborhood, right? There's no place where all the Native people are being relocated there. They end up in a variety of places, but generally not near each other. So just more and more isolation and cultural alienation absolutely happening. And so
I felt what you probably were feeling when you first when you were at university and also in your law, is that I reached that very dark and angry place.
Yeah, but I love how with like the tribal activism spread, that's when the switch. And again, it's not that isn't fraught with a lot of, difficulty, but I love like the openness. We get, land, we've got, water, and we see Native people, landing on Alcatraz, which is something that happened at the same time. There's many, many different things happening, right? That are all going on, that Native nations are doing at the same time. These folks who are urban Native people who have been relocated are doing in cities, taking action. And it's just this time where both sets of people, those on the reservation as well as those off the reservation, really are bringing a lot of attention to what's happening. And you see that sense of, there's been this civil rights and the Black Power movement, and Native people saying, like, we've been talking about these things all along, and we also want to take this opportunity to say, when are things going to get better for us, and really working in solidarity. You see a lot of that happening at the time, and that continues, today with a lot of those same movements. But I feel like, at that point we're kind of moving in a different direction, and it's not to say that there aren't still struggles. Obviously, I mean, you don't have the final spread, which not the final spread, but the final topic of sovereign resurgence. And I love this because, again, you're showing, what is a very typical scene now of, again, Native people marching, whether it's about murdered and missing Indigenous women, whether it's about a pipeline, whether it's about, access to healthcare, whatever the issue is. And God knows we've had so many challenges this last year with the pandemic. I just felt like that was such a powerful spread for us to like end the presentations on before we go to the reveal of the students' presentations. And I love that final one. Yes. Everyone with their trifolds and
there's an Easter egg in here, isn't there?
Yes, there sure is. I don't know if people can see that. Scoot it over just a little bit.
This way?
There you go. Yep. You look in that corner back there, there's two people that might be familiar. I hadn't mentioned that to anyone, so that's good that we did the reveal here. Like we're there listening.
How lucky were we to be able to catch up at the ALA in 2019 to talk about our book, because it's, as many people know, it's unusual for the author illustrator to get together, but for us, it's vital, and we just love catching up, of course. And we had dinner with Karen, and I'm not quite sure who came up with the idea, because we all had a wine, I think, but about setting it in a school. And I think that was Karen's idea, but it was brilliant. But I did think the last spread could be this wordless spread where they're all sharing their presentations, and having that framework just adds such an extra level for students reading the book, but also for us to, and for you. And what did you think about that idea?
No, I liked it. My concern was, when I'm writing, I don't think about the illustrations. I think about you as the illustrator or whoever's illustrating it, and that you need space to create the art. But in my mind, what I'm writing is a movie. And so I want things to flow. I want people to be able to follow what I'm saying. But I know that whatever is going to be created in the art is going to take it to this whole other level that I can't really envision. So I'm not thinking about the pictures necessarily. But on this book, I was a little concerned. how are we going to do this? It's a nonfiction book. Like, we can't have, we've got to have something that engages the reader. And I know with We Are Grateful, OTSALIHELIGA, that I had written it from the perspective of Cherokee people in general in the community, and our value about gratitude. When it came time to do the art, this family is introduced. You guys introduced the family on the who readers can follow different people in the family through the book. And I was like, what is this? So I thought, what's going to happen with this one? And so when Karen mentions the school, I'm thinking, okay, and this is nonfiction. I've written from the perspective of Native nations, saying that regardless of what's happening, we are still here. Maybe at times that's mere survival, certainly in the beginning with assimilation and the just hardcore policies that are being put upon the different tribes, to that place of, more thriving we are now, and a more emphatic, we are still here, even when in areas that we're not thriving, but we want to be. And that's what we're trying to move towards. So I thought, how are we going to do this? And then I thought, but there are schools that are teaching this curriculum. There are tribally chartered schools. There are tribally run schools. There are public chartered schools that have a lot of Native students that have adapted curriculum and do teach these topics. So I felt okay with it then, because again, I didn't want it to be this kind of fantastical realm we were creating that really had no basis anywhere in reality. But we do have those schools, across the country in various cities, in suburbs. So then I was like, okay, whatever you want to do, it's fine. But yeah, that was a concern, because I thought, how are we going to do this? But I absolutely love how it does come from the students presenting the presentations, and you added those headers and the names, and because we now have the audiobook coming out this month. And so we've had all these Native students who are voicing the different presentations. So it's just perfect together. And, I wish that we had been able to go around the country and get different people from different nations to do it. They're all from tribes in this area because, again, COVID, we're still not moving around that much. But I'm super excited, just super duper excited for that to be out in the world.
And I think it took you a lot of faith in me, especially when I send you something like this to show you that's going to be a picture. Because these are my sloppy copies. And then I did do a finer version so people could actually see a bit more what they were going to look like. But you can see the faces. They don't have eyeballs, noses, mouths. My roughs are really roughs.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking to you from my studio, which is very special at the moment, because then I could actually show you some of my materials I used to also create the books. So what I did is I painted the backgrounds first using a very big brush, like something like these big brushes here. And then lightly with pencil, I would put in maybe that path up the Lookout Trail in New Mexico where that one sat. And then I would use like middle-sized brushes. And then I worked my way all the way down to very fine brushes to do fine detail.
Wow.
The people's faces and all that. And the gouache paints that you mentioned that I use 3 different brands. My favorite is one from Japan. Love them. But so I have 3 different brands that I use. The Italian one. So I feel like I'm traveling through my paint box in England and Italy. And so I have all different places here. But these are the gouache paints that I use. And each painting probably took me 2-3 days all day long to do. But that's not really time-wise, because it was all the research, as you know, Traci, and all the prelims. And I think it was so important when you did get that prelims to have that faith, but also that we checked with all the different nations and tribes about the accuracy of them, because to me, that's my utmost important, to yours as well, that what we're including is accurate, and even to the smallest details of the bird and the branch. Do we have the feathers right in the hawk eagle that's up in the tree there. And so it's definitely a team to put this together.
Yeah, it is. And that's where I feel fortunate because of the studies and the work that I've done previously, that I have a large network of people to draw on and say, hey, can you help us out here? Because, we're not experts on this. And I also knew that I couldn't include everything. So the fact that, like, for the religious freedom spread, there's all these really super important Supreme Court cases. And so the fact that we could take that spread and show the Supreme Court, because anyone who knows anything about Native nations knows the importance and just the power of the federal court system. We constantly are dealing with that. We deal a lot, obviously, with the executive and legislative branch, but the judicial branch is critical as well. And one of the reasons, too, that I wanted the book, it's like, if you have someone who grows up to be a legislator, someone who serves in the executive or a judge, district level, Court of Appeals or Supreme Court, like the majority of them have no knowledge whatsoever of Native nations. And that's a critical part of the law that they're going to be deciding. So I love that that's in there to kind of say, okay, we couldn't include all the cases, but this is something that Native people regularly are doing, is arguing cases of great importance, not just for their tribe, but whatever's decided generally impacts all of Native nations in the country, even if, they're not involved in the case. So I really appreciated the fact that you got all those details right? Like that case that was depicted, those were the justices that were on the court, it was done that day, that morning, etc. There is a lot of detail that goes into it, but it's important for, again, the young readers who look at this and want to pursue further knowledge about any topic to have a solid starting place. And I feel like this book is a launching pad for that.
Yeah, and it was important, like that particular scene too, is to pick them at the age they would have been during that case, to find the resource material, because of course it was easy to find photographs of them now, but not at that period. And each, the Supreme Court judges who were sitting, there's an empty seat, and people say, why is that seat empty? Well, they weren't there in that day. I mean, we went to the depicting everything as accurate as possible.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you, like I say, we've had these very weighty topics, and it is a weighty book, right? There's a lot of information that's given in the art, in the text, in the back matter. I love that your art, like I said, makes the text even more accessible and just invites people into every page to really take the text into heart. But I was wondering if you had a favorite spread that you had done.
It's hard to choose. I mean, I do love the tribal activism. I just loved playing the parody on the Mayflower landing of the boat arriving on the shore of Alcatraz there, and trying to simulate the pose that the people on the boat hitting Plymouth Rock and the activists on that boat. That's one of my favorites, because I felt very, that was the turning point in the book. When the voices were finally heard, and I loved the way they stood. So my feelings behind that picture, but every single one from the first one, even though it was very painful, I think I am attached to every single spread in so many different ways. The child welfare spread too, showing the families together, is so important to me. The Wampanoag and Massachusetts there. So no, it would be every single one I am attached, but if I had to pick one, maybe that might be the one. And also the title page, because the energy of going into that school, of the children being so proud, with so much pride, to be able to show their families of what they've been doing and working on, that of course gets revealed at the very last spread as well. What about you?
Similar. I mean, it's kind of the same with like We Are Grateful, OTSALIHELIGA. I love all of the art in the book. And but for We Are Grateful, OTSALIHELIGA, it would be if I had to pick one, it would definitely have been the stomp dance depiction, because that is so integral to our culture and our ceremonial life. And with this one, I love all of them. They're just, each of them are so powerful with what they depict. Again, if I had to pick one, it would be language revival, because we have, kids who are learning to speak the Cherokee language. That's what's depicted on that page. And it's so powerful because, during this pandemic, we lost one of our very revered speakers, not to COVID, but he, created a Cherokee language dictionary, a verbs book, and 75% of the Cherokee language is verbs. So they've named a whole language program. They've taken kind of all the different language components that Cherokee Nation operates and put it under one department named after him. It's the Durbin Feeling, Language Act. And so these kids, in this one, are learning the Cherokee language, and they're learning about Sequoia, and they're learning the syllabary. And that part it makes me very emotional to, see that, because in addition to losing Mr. Feeling, we also lost a lot of Cherokee speakers this last year to COVID. And so it's really critical right now that we have, our kids. And one of the programs that we've started in the last few years is called the Master Language Apprentice Program. And that takes adults and puts them, pays them in essence to work with first language speakers for 2 years. And when they emerge from that program, they can teach the language, they'll be able to speak the language, they can, write in the language, they can write curriculum, they can develop things that will help more young people learn to speak the language. So every time I see that page, I just get super emotional.
I guess you could see a similarity in the teacher there reading to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Another little bit of an Easter egg there.
Yes. So it's just it's wonderful.
No, thank you, Wado. Because now when I create the art, I'm thinking of you all the time. So
well, like I say, I just I can't say Wado and Galilaiga, how grateful I am for you, Frane, because it always amazes me when people say like the author and the illustrator don't communicate, because I feel like it's really a team effort to create a book. Now, granted, I recognize there's nothing I could tell an illustrator about making, a box or drawing a robot or, the moon or whatever. But, I'm not ever telling you what to draw. I'm not ever telling you what to put on the page. We talk through things, and then you're going to create, and you're going to figure out, how to represent those things. And I just have been really honored to have these 2 books with you, and the journeys that it has taken us on, and just the time that we get to spend together. So my hope is that soon it will be safe for us to hang out and share the book with readers and others again, because I really enjoyed doing that so much after the first book.
Thank you so much, Traci. And thank you so much for this opportunity to work with you. I'm just in awe of you. And I think we've created a beautiful book together once again. So wado, Traci.
Oh, wado, Frane. Yes. And I just want to give a shout out to all those who, answered our questions, were so eager to consult and help us with this. And of course, to everyone at Charles Bridge, our editor, Karen Boss, the entire team. It takes a village to put this together, and all the wrangling with text, all the different pieces. We're just super, super excited to have it out in the world now, so that everyone can experience it for themselves. So, wado, and thank you for joining us. enjoyed spending time with you. It's been great to see you, Frane.
Great to see you, Traci.